This time on the channel, I show you how to get your carburetors back on your GL1500 and get it running. Whew! Get ready to put in some long hours. Did I mention it's cold out here too? Welcome back. Today we're going to finish my Goldwing up and we're going to put the carburetors back on. If you remember from the previous video where we removed the carburetors, I showed you step by step on how to do that. Now I'm going to show you how to put it back together step by step. And if you haven't figured it out, it's pretty much the same thing in just reverse. Alright, so we'll be putting everything back on nice and slowly, but I will be walking you through it. So this will be a walk in the park. I promise you it's not that hard. We'll tackle it together and there'll be no issue here. If you've already done your prep work by checking your vacuum lines and everything and you're ready to go, then we can continue on. If you haven't, please do that. If you don't know what I'm talking about, watch the last video where I explained a lot of that. You can hit that, go watch that, and then come back to this video. If you notice that the scenery is a little bit different in here, we have cars in here now. That's because it's raining and cold outside. So we're going to try to do this quickly as possible before I freeze my little touche off. So I think we're about ready to get started. There's nothing else to do. If you've done everything and ready, then let's get started. Okay, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to put on a new fill filter. As you can see, right there. I bought a new fill filter here for this special occasion. Now I've already put a new fill filter back in November. But just to be on the safe side, I'm going to go ahead and replace it. Because since we got all that carburetor rebuilt, there's no sense of me putting on a used fill filter. Might as well put a brand new one on it. So let's get this thing off and get it replaced. Now that we got that on, we can move on to our next step. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take our carburetor and we're going to hook up our drain hoses here. You got one here and one here. Those two small hoses at the bottom that go to the bottom of the bike, that's where they go to. Whenever there's a fuel overflow, they drain to the outside of the bike. So if you've ever seen fuel coming out, that's, you know, they're a pretty good sign that your carburetors are loading up. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and put them on and get these hoses hooked up. Then we'll move on to getting the cruise control and the choke cable connected up, which is right here. All right, if you don't know which way is the front, just remember that your radiator lines right here go up towards the front of the bike. All right, so let me get this put on. Okay, now that we got those on, let's go ahead and put our cables back on, cruise control and our choke cable. All right, now we're going to put the cruise control cable on. got that on. Now we can move on to the choke cable. Okay, now with the chokes in, you got it running real tight. As you can see, I'll show you in the video, I've got it nice and tight so that when I hit the choke, all right, still a little rough, not too bad. Yeah, she'll be fine. All right, now that we got it all there, we need to line it up on the boots now and go ahead and put it back on and get it, smash it in there, and we'll start lining everything, getting everything else hooked up. Alright, now I'm going to try to smash them onto the intake boot, so it's going to take a little bit of time to get it lined up, and then you smash them in there. Okay, if you heard the pop, that means you got them in there. Just make sure, just give them a good, and make sure they're down all the way. Alright. While we're here, let's go ahead and connect up all our upper hoses. Get everything up here connected, and when we're done, we'll tighten up the intake boots and go from there. Okay, now that we got that done, let's move on to the accelerator cables. Okay, now here's my accelerator cables. We're getting ready to put them back on. Now, you should know which one goes top or bottom. For me, in this case, it's all the one that's chewed up, if you remember from the last video. So we're going to go ahead and put this will be on top, and this one will be on bottom. If you don't know which one is which, you'll have to play with the accelerator and figure out the push and pull until you get it right. All right, if it doesn't work one way, then you just got to swap them, that's all. So you got a 50-50 shot. So I'm going to go ahead and get this put on and get these tightened up so that it works just fine. Alright, let's see how good she works. Like I said, those accelerator cables of mine are just about wore out, but they are working. Alright. Okay, the next thing we gotta do is we gotta get our radiator hoses hooked up. Those right there. It's gonna be a little booger bear. But you can see one of them's lined up and the other one is sort of there. So I'm gonna need those long needle nose again. I'm gonna have to get in there and play with it so you guys get to watch me play and see how fast I can put them on. All right, finally got that done. It took me a lot longer than normal. The clamp got twisted around, so I had to dig it out with my finger. Boy, it was sometimes those things can be a booger-bear there. So I'm going to tidy this up here, and then we'll move down to tightening the intake boots down. All right, on the side note on the radiator hoses, I want you to notice how close I got them up to the 90s. When you put these hoses on, you need to get them up as high and far as you can. All right, you can see I got that one up there close to 90, and the same thing with the other one, but I can't really get in there with my camera. But you need to get them up there all the way, because you don't want to put them on just a little ways, because there's a good chance that they might vibrate or fall off, and that is the last thing you want to do. So make sure when you put them up, you run them up as far as you can, then put the clamp on. All right, once you get the radiator lines hooked up and everything looks good, go ahead and take your long screwdriver and let's tighten up the intake boots. Should be just the top one. You got everything hooked up. Your carburetor is pushed down flush with the boots. Make sure that there's little indentions on your carburetor, and make sure that they're flush down there or hitting the boots, so it's sitting nice and good. And if your radiator lines are hooked up and everything else is hooked up, we can now connect the battery to start it. Now our purpose this time of starting it is just to make sure that there's no leaks, everything's running. Alright, so we're not going to set the idle or anything right now, because we can't really do it until the air filter is back on. You need all that garbage, that air filter, all the breather hoses hooked up. You need it all hooked up so it'll run fine, and then you can set your idle. But right now we're just going to check for leaks before we get too much further. So there's no sense of putting it all back together and find out something blew off on leaks. Alright. Okay, now we're going to temporarily hook up the battery just to see if she'll crank over. Make sure everything's going to be good. Okay, before we get started, we want to prime this thing a little bit, and how you do that is right here's your accelerator pump, and when you turn it here with the throttle, just give it a good thump, and what that does is that will get these squirting right up in here. I don't know if you can see that. See if you can see that a little bit. Let me zoom in, and then you can see the fuel squirt out right over in there. And that's getting it primed up a little bit. Okay, let's crank her over. Choke on. You can see we're getting some fuel now, so she's going to get ready to fire up here in just a second. Whoa, uh-oh. Looks like we got a fuel leak. One of my lines looks like it. Alright, so I'm going to go get a new hose here. Alright, see if it's still doing it. Oh man. Okay, I got the fuel line fixed now. I had to go find another hose here. I keep a spare. I mean, literally, I keep a box of spare hoses. Most of that came from Goldwing, some of that didn't. Always keep them. Fuel hoses, vacuum lines, always keep a spare. I was able to find one to fit in there. I had to change the clamps out because it was just a tad too big on the T-end, but We got it now. It looks good. So now we're going to crank it up again, and we're going to check for leaks. That's all we're doing right now. We're not setting out, just checking for leaks. So let's try this again. There we go. Not bad. Everything's looking good. All right. Everything checks out. Our radiator lines are not leaking. The fuel line is working now. It's not squirting everywhere. All right. The accelerator cables are working just fine. They're not binding up. So everything looks like it's all hooked up. So we are ready for the next step, which will be probably one of the most difficult things. We'll be putting this air filter assembly back on. And this will be hard because we have to connect all of these hoses. I'm sorry, you guys can't see that. All these hoses down here. This one and those two. These two will be okay. This one right here is going to be a pain in the tush. All right. So my advice is to get the hoses hooked up, set her down, because you can see there's a spot, special spot for these to sit down right in here. So, and then once you get it all set, then we'll screw it on. All right, but do that last. Don't screw it on until you got everything ready. All right, let's let the mayhem begin. Okay, we finally got the bottom half of this air filter assembly done. Got all three hoses. Let me tell you, that took a long time to get this to all work. Whew. This is probably the hardest thing about the installation job. It's not the radiator lines, but it's putting this back on and all the hoses on without them flopping on when you're trying. And if you saw, I had a very difficult time. It was so long I probably couldn't even film it all. But it took me a while. So if you're having trouble with this, take a break, walk away, You'll get it. Don't give up. All right? It's my advice to you. Walk away sometimes is the best thing to do. Come back later. All right, now that we've got this ready, we can now put the air filter back in. All right, let's put the air filter on. Alright, if you notice here, there's a little diagram on which this way should go. So if it ever comes apart like this, you'll know about which way where it came. About like that. Okay, now the air box is on. Okay, now we're ready to set the idle for the thing. Now the ideal idle is right, I believe, around 900. But if the bike settles a little bit below it, it won't be too bad as long as it runs okay and it's good response. But 900 is your target. If it starts settling down a little bit below that, you know, like 850 or so, you know, it's okay. It won't hurt it or anything. But make sure that if you're like my handle here for the accelerator, it gets a little stuck, so I'll have to force mine back. So we're going to start up and we're going to set our idle. All right, she's idling about 750-ish, so we want to go up just a little bit. All right, I believe we've got her. Alright, that's going to be about good enough. It's between about 850 900. This is about where this bike likes to idle. It's about 850 900. So I think we're good to go. Alright, we're going to turn it on and make sure she starts up. There she goes. Settles down. Alright, now that you got the bike running, it's all good, no leaks. Everything seems to be just running just right. Idle's set. You're now ready to put the plastics back on. I've already done the other side, nothing to it. I'm going to show you how to do this side. Both sides are virtually identical, so it doesn't matter what side you start with. So if you want to start with this side, you should be able to do the other side by the time you get done with this side. No problems. Alright, so let's get this side back on. The first thing you want to do is get this bracket right here. Alright, go ahead and put it on. And if you don't remember which way it goes, remember the little lip here. Let's see if you can see that a little bit better. This lip right here goes forward, all right? Goes to the front of the bike. So just remember that when you put that back on. Now you can just, all you got to do now is sitting it on here. As you can see, I don't have it perfectly lined up. Once we get the plastic on, we'll push it and then we'll get that special nut bolt in there and then that'll hold it in place. But you can remember the plastic sits right inside there like you see there. So that's the same thing that'll happen here. So right now we got to get the plastic fairing right here on. And it'll take us a little bit to get it a little bit of adjusted. So let's get that on. All right, the first thing we're going to start with is the side upper plastic here. You need to make sure that your wiring for your radio is out of the way. So I usually just tuck it behind the front fairing there. So it'll just be up out of the way. We just need it to be out of the way and not in our way when we're putting this on here. All right, and don't forget that when you're putting this on, this little vent here goes in this little slot right here. You can see it go up and down. Make sure you get it all lined up to go in there, all right? That's why I said do this first, because that way you can see if everything's lined up. And plus, we got that bolt that you got to go right there. So let's get this on. Okay, now we're going to put on this little special bolt here. It goes right here. And this is where it's going to get really interesting, because sometimes these plastics, you know, over the years, they get a little warped, get a little out of shape. So they're gonna be a little bit, they're gonna fight us a little bit to get back in. But you're just gonna have to slowly work it back in there. All right, it's gonna be a little bit of a pain, but not too bad. She'll go back into place once we just ask her nicely. And then when we're done with that, we'll put this bolt in right up here. And then this will finish this front fairing, other than our reverse handle, which we'll get to shortly. All right, so let's put this in. So grab your 10mm deep socket and let the fun begin here. All right, we got that on. So let's move on to our next thing. Okay, while we're here, we're gonna go ahead and put our reverse handle back on. If you remember. All right, the thing I want to show you real fast is you see this little side pin right here. Now this pin is very important, and it needs to go right in that hole right there. All right, so when you put it in, you need to make sure that it lines up and goes in there. Very important, otherwise this thing will not function right. Okay, so you just need a T6 Allen right here. T-handle works the best. You can use an L, whatever. And go ahead and get it lined up and put on. Well, that's one less thing to do, so let's move on. All right, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to put the lower side fairing on. If you remember from a previous episode of the last one, I cut the wires here for the LED lights, so I'm going to go ahead and get those back on, and then we're going to show you how to put this on. When you slide this in here, don't forget there's a tip. I'll take this back off for just a second. There's a tip right here that needs to go in that hole. When you get ready to install this, don't forget to plug up your curb light. Bingo. Once you got that hooked up, you're ready to go. Just make sure your clearance light's out. It goes in. And then just push the bottom pan down a little bit, and this thing should kind of fit in here once you get it. There we go. There. There's a little bit of flexibility here. There we go. She's in. All right. There she is. All right. The next thing we do is go ahead and get this side light, marker light on. All right. If you're not, it just clips right on. Ready to go. And this thing goes on right here. Now, if you're like me and you have one of these fancy covers, these fancy high dollar covers for cheap plastic, stay tuned because I'll show you how to put these on. All right. Now we just, basically all you got to do is, if I can get them, keep them from all falling out here. So you see all the screws? We've got to line them up with all these holes here. And then try to get a few of them started enough where once we get them all started, then we can tighten them down. All right? So let's do that. And try not to lose any bolts in the process. But that's okay. We can start with these two. Got it on, and once they're all tight, let's make sure everything works. Clearance lights on, and the LED lights are on. All right, we're good to go. Now, the next thing you got to do, if I can find it here in the bucket, rumbling, is you gotta put these caps on next. Now these things are a pain in the butt and everything, but it makes it look nicer. So if you got them, if you lost them, but I got all 6 of mine, so I still put them on, but I guarantee you the moment I lose one, I am never going to put these back on. So anyway, sometimes you're going to have like a little, sometimes a little punch or something, or a little screwdriver. Well, screwdriver makes a little marks, but just something nice to pull it in, push it in, and make sure it all sits flush, because these things will bounce. So when you're putting these on, you might want to put your thumb over them or a finger or something to keep it from flying all over your shop. All right, so let's get them put on. right, now that it's on, she looks all better. All right, and we're just about there. All right, the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna put on our side plastic. All right, now it looks like we've actually gotten somewhere. Okay, next we're gonna put on our trim piece right here. Now each of them go to a certain side, so you're gonna have to play to make sure you get the right one, but it's very easy to line up. All right, so we're just gonna get her snuffed in there. Just clips right on, nothing to it. Now we move on to our next piece. Next we'll be putting on the wing vent here. Please notice that there's a little slot in here. Right here in the side fairing, right about right here, there's a hole. That's for that little notch to go right into. So nothing to it. Now if you remember earlier when I talked about special screws, if you got these, put that right there with the wing vent. That's for that cap to go on it. I don't have the cap, but I do have one special screw. And I'm glad I do, so that way I can show y'all. But these are for the wing vents. So use those for the wing vents if you got those. All right, easy peasy. All right, let's move on. All right, next we're gonna put on our wing vent here. Now if you notice here, I've already started a screw here, and what that does is that helps line these two holes up so that I can get the wing vent lined up and started. Once I get them all situated, then we can take this bolt back out, then we can put the little pocket thing that goes in there. But that's a little trick there. If you're having trouble getting it all lined up, take the middle screw, get it started so that it all lines up, and then put your wing vent on and take the bolt out, pocket, put it back in, and you're ready to go. All right, so let's get to it. Okay, now we're ready to put the little pocket in. This one should go in real easy. I'm going to say that. Oh, make sure you get your CB antenna, not CB antenna, CB cord out, and make sure you put it right there. Now what I'll do with these 4 bolts here is I'll just get them started, and then I'll tighten them down. Once I know it's all lined up, we'll tighten it all the way down. Right now we're just going to start them. Once you got the pocket all secured down and everything looks good, go ahead and do the other side if you haven't. All right, you need to do the other side before you move on to the next step. All right, now if you've already done the other side, we can move on to the next step. All right, now we're going to put in this center piece right here, and the reason why you need to have both these lowers on for this thing to click into. All right, so that's why you got to have the other side done. So we're going to go ahead and put it on. Now if you notice, for me, I've drilled holes in here on both sides, because what happens is you can plainly see one of my tits are broken off, where on this side is still good. If you have something similar to this on your bike, you might want to consider this. What I've done is I take just little machine screws there and just screw it in there, and it gives it a little bit extra support, because I don't want this blown off right now until I find another one. All right, these things are costly. They're all costly. And let's try not, I don't need to spend any extra money. I don't. So I'm going to do it, and honestly, it's hardly noticeable. So let's put it on. There she is. She's on. That is most of the plastics. Almost done. All right, now it's time to move on to some of the more delicate items. All right, the first thing we got to do here is, if you haven't already guessed, we've got to put our radio back. And the first thing we need to do is we're going to go ahead and put our wires back in. Then we're going to try to form fit this in. So it'll take a little bit of time. So you guys can just sit back and watch. Oh, this thing's cold. right, once you get all the wires in, you can start getting it assembled. You may want to test it before you do to make sure you got it all hooked up right. Perfect. Looks like she's working. All right, let's move on. Once you've made everything's lined up, make sure these tabs over here are lined up and these things go in the holes. All right. If you remember from a previous episode or from the last remove of the carburetor, there's these little levers in here. Make sure that they are locked in. In fact, I had them in the open position, the wrong position. You'll know that they'll grab because they'll feel it. You'll feel it. All right. Now that you got those levers in there, all nicely secured down, we're ready to go. I think we're ready to put the nuts on. Go ahead and put all this stuff up together. That way all we have left is just the seat. That's getting exciting. Okay, now we're going to put our little top piece on. First thing we're going to do is go ahead and connect our air horn back up. All right, we're going to make sure it works. Oh yeah, she works. All right, so let's remove the key out of the way. All right, and get this thing to fit in here. All right, now these plastics are going to be a little bit difficult sometimes. They won't cooperate. You know, the older they get a little bit out of shape. They get a little warped. You know, they've been off 10 million times since, you know, since when, whoever owned the bike last, you know, so the plastics are going to be difficult at times. So if you're having a hard time or with any of this, just know that's normal, completely normal. All right, keep back in there. All right, now we got that back in, we can get the little pocket covers back in. All right, I got little tits here on the side, but line up in here. So you can get them all lined up and it really just pops right in. You're just going to have to probably move the handlebars just a little bit. Okay, now that we got those on, that is almost done. The last thing to do, whew, I'm so wore out now, is to put that seat on. Okay, we're ready to put the seat on. Just so you know, there's a special little place for this. That's why you put it in first. As you get up there and line it up, push it back. Okay, now that we got these on, we can put our little handrails on and our backrest place. We finally got that on. I don't know why it took so long. Yes, I do. Apparently I forgot the longer bolts go here and the shorter bolts go there. Apparently it won't work if it's vice versa. Don't want to work well at all. Anyway, that's on, and now we're ready for the final touch. Put on the backrest. All right. Now that we got that on, we are done. Woo! I'm pretty sure I got this thing back in the right spot. If not, my wife will tell me if it's not in the right spot. But for all intents and purposes, this is done. let's wrap this video up. Well, there you go. A complete step-by-step, roughly, of how to assemble this motorcycle together. I hope you enjoyed it. It has been a long, tedious video. This probably would have been one of my challenging videos to all do because of all the mechanical work and moving the camera around. It takes a lot of work. But I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you like to give it the thumbs up. This was a lot of hard work. This doesn't happen in one day. This actually took me several days to get all the filament and plastics together. So I hope you learned something, and I hope you'll attempt to do this yourself. Because that's my main goal of what I wanted to do here, was to show you guys how to do it and hopefully give you guys the courage to go out there and do this yourself. Nothing to it. It's just a little tedious process. It's about the best thing I can explain about it. Alright guys, I'm going to end this video. It is late at night. I haven't ate dinner yet, so I am ready to call it quits. So I will see you guys next time, and you guys stay safe out there. You guys didn't think after all that hard work we wasn't going to go for a ride.